Xiangling is a Pyro 4-star that can easily compete with a lot of 5-stars in the game, and she's also an entirely free character to get. Hey guys, my name is Blossoms and welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Xiangling and a Pyro damage build on her, as she is an amazing unit, and if you don't have her built yet, then you absolutely need to, because she is in a lot of even big whales end game teams, as she's Pyro 1, which is one of the best elements to facilitate the strongest elemental reactions in the game, but 2, she does almost all of her damage without needing to be on the field whatsoever, and that is extremely valuable so that your main DPS can continue to be on the field and deal their damage. But before we actually get into the build, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this kind of content. It helps me out a ton and I deeply appreciate it. You can always change your mind later. But without further ado, let's go ahead and show off the Pyro DPS Xiangling build. But before we actually build her, you need to know a little bit about her kit, and I'm sure a lot of you already know how she works, but we're just going to go over it real briefly. Basically, she has Goba. You drop him on the ground, he sits there and he's a little fire turret for a while. He can be sucked up by things like Jean's E, Kazuha's E, Sucrose's E, and Q, which is very important to know depending on the team that you have him in. She also has this Q here, and when you use this Q, she does a little bit of a spin up with her spear and then launches it, and basically you get a little Pyro Beyblade around your character, dealing Pyro damage. You can see the modifiers here are pretty good, all near the 200% range at level 11 here. I do have mine Xiangling at C6, and it's got a decent duration and a relatively long cooldown of 20 seconds and a high energy cost, and that's something you're going to want to be thinking of when you're building your Xiangling, because energy cost is a big thing for her. Her passives aren't anything too insane, but they are worth mentioning. One just increases the range of Gyoba, and then the other one here gives a 10% attack buff to whoever picks up a chili pepper that Gyoba leaves behind whenever his duration is up. As I said, the big strengths of Xiangling are the fact that her E skill and Q both continue to persist on the field whenever you swap to another character, and that's where all of our damage is coming from. You can make a physical DPS Xiangling. I actually have a video of one from a while back if you want to check that out, but if you want to deal the most damage with your Xiangling, you're going to be basically building her as a Pyro DPS, and as a Pyro DPS, she simply doesn't need to be on the field. You can have her on the field if you want, but she simply does not need to be to deal the vast majority of her damage. When it comes to constellations, Xiangling actually has amazing constellations. Her C1 and 2 are pretty good. C1 just allows Gyoba to provide Pyro resistance shred, and the C2 here is pretty whatever, kind of useless. But the C4 is where things really take off, because it increases Pyronado's duration by 40%. And if you recall, we had a duration of 10%, so that makes it a 14-second duration and only a 20-second cooldown. So then you only have 6 seconds of downtime, which is really nice. And then the 6th one here just increases your Pyro damage bonus for every party member, which is really good, especially if you're doing like a Pyro Resonance team. Xiangling should be on that team because she's just going to be helping out your damage overall between, you know, Gyoba C1 and the Pyro bonus at C6. She's an amazing character for Pyro Resonance, but you simply don't need her at any constellation for her to be a good and a strong character, but these certainly do help. When it comes to artifact sets on Xiangling, you actually have quite a few options. I would go with the one that has some of your best substats, but the best one for her is hands down going to be the Emblem of Severed Fate. It increases that energy recharge, and that increases the damage of her elemental burst by her energy recharge, which is really going to matter because most of her damage is going to be coming from her elemental burst. So you can just pump up her energy recharge, which you're going to need to do anyway to make sure you're getting her elemental burst consistently. So this is just a really good set on her. But if you do have a really good Crimson Witch of Flame set, or if you have a really good Noblesse Oblige set with just crazy substats or something, I would use that until you can get a better Emblem of Severed Fate set that can really make it to where she's dealing more damage than these at one point or another, because if you have really good substats, it's just going to outrank the set bonus on the Emblem of Severed Fate. But once you get some decent substats and whatnot, you can go ahead and move on to the Emblem of Severed Fate, and I think that is going to be your best. Of course, you can do some split sets. Things like Crimson Witch and Emblem of Severed Fate aren't too bad because the energy recharge is really good, but I wouldn't really recommend it. I would commit to the 4 pieces of like Crimson Witch, or the 4-piece of Noblesse Oblige, or the 4-piece of Emblem of Severed Fate, because she does a really good job at taking advantage of it. As for the main stats on our set though, we have attack percent, pyro damage bonus, and crit rate and or crit damage depending on your substats. I went with attack percent on the sands here. I did mess around with energy recharge, but it simply wasn't dealing as much damage on the elemental burst as attack percent was, so I think this is just going to be better, and then shooting for high energy recharge substats is going to be the best move. Now I will say my substats aren't actually too amazing. I have some pretty decent crit rate and crit damage ones, but I do fall off in a couple of areas here, and I've got some good elemental mastery, which is actually very important for Xiangling. So that is something you want to take in consideration as well. Things like crit rate and crit damage are going to be very important, but elemental mastery and energy recharge are going to be very important as well, if not just as important as things like crit rate and crit damage, especially energy recharge on the Emblem of Severed Fate, because that just translates to more damage. And elemental mastery is really good on Xiangling because of the way her elemental burst works by spinning around the character means she is generally going to be the one proccing any reaction, just because of the pace of the tornado there. So having good elemental mastery on Xiangling can be very important. When it comes to weapons for Xiangling, we just got a brand new one in 2.1, and that's why we're basically making this video. Is the catch right here. This one is amazing. It's a free-to-play weapon that is absolutely incredible on characters like Xiangling that really like their elemental burst. This increases their elemental burst damage by 32% at R5 and increases the crit rate, so you get a consistency bump and a damage bump. Not to mention it has an energy recharge substat, which is amazing for the Emblem of Severed Fate set like we mentioned before. So this is just all around her best weapon, especially if she's using something like the Emblem of Severed Fate, because most of her damage is going to be coming from her elemental burst anyway, and increasing the damage and consistency on that is going to be very, very important. Now, if you do have something like a Dragon's Bane and you're running a Vaporize only comp, then maybe this is going to be the move for you, because it does have elemental mastery here, and it does get that increase in damage for opponents affected by Hydro or Pyro. And we mentioned how effective elemental mastery is on her, since she's always going to be the one proccing. This can be your best in slot if you're going for a Vaporize team. You also do have a couple other options of things like the Keytang Cross Spear. I particularly really like this spear, especially at higher refinements, because you get an increase in the skill damage and it bumps up her consistency a lot just by regenerating a bit of energy. It's definitely not going to be the highest damage output version of Xiangling, but it does make her very consistent, and I do really like this spear on her. So if you're free to play and you don't really have anything and you just really can't get the catch because the fishing takes forever and it's taking some time, the Keytang Cross Spear isn't a bad option until you can get your hands on a catch. When it comes to the actual stats on my Xiangling, I will say that I am lacking a little bit, but I do think the current state of my Xiangling is a very good baseline to have for something like the Emblem of Severed Fate. Things like a 57% crit rate and a 114% crit damage are pretty solid, and then having an energy recharge near 190 is a really good place to be for using Emblem of Severed Fate. I think ideally you would want to be in the 200 to 220 range on your energy recharge, and then of course having your crit rate and crit damage up as much as possible is going to be ideal, while still maintaining a good enough attack percentage, because as I mentioned before, I did use an energy recharge goblin that got me to like 230 I believe on the energy recharge here, but that was actually dealing less than something like the attack percentage there. So you are going to need that balance, but you are going to want to be a bit above where we currently are in this video. But I do think where we are right now is a very strong baseline to have. We got a pyro damage bonus of 46.6, nothing too crazy. And then the talents here, as I mentioned and you saw before, are 7, 9, and 11 with a Constellation 6. All right, so we showed off how we should build her. Let's go ahead and take her into Abyss, just so you guys can get an idea of how much damage she can do per hit on her elemental burst. All right, so we got her in a pretty simple and basic team here on floor 12. Chongyun, Kazuha, Bennett, and Xiangling are all really good characters to have. And if you really get her going with things like Bennett's Q and Kazuha's buff, you can start making this elemental burst deal some real damage, especially when you start getting some of the other things going there. See, we're doing about 12k per hit right now without the buffs here, which we'll also show off, just so you guys have an idea of how that all looks. We do about 9k I believe, or 8k, something like that, when I tested earlier. So we'll go ahead and show that off in just a second. Just gotta get that. You see, we're doing about 8k. I did pick up the chili pepper as well, and we are getting a little bit of a bonus from Bennett being on the team of the 25%. So I believe we typically do around 7 or 8k, usually without those bonuses. But as you can see, if you pair her with the right team, you can really start popping off with pretty simple stuff. And as we mentioned, she does not need to be on the field to do the vast majority of her damage. And yeah, you can see just how multiple hits of 16k can be really good. Not to mention this elemental burst snapshot, so getting out of the circle and getting those buffs, and then, you know, just casting her elemental burst to keep those buffs is really, really strong. And now I also wanted to show you guys what it looks like when you put her in a proper team that can buff her and consistently allow her to do a reverse vaporize, just so you guys can see the damage, because it's a lot different from what I just showed you. I wanted to give you guys a realistic damage showcase first, and then I wanted to show you guys what it's like when you really start buffing her up. That's when you can start to expect hitting like 30k reverse vapes there. And yeah, you can start to see how this is a lot different from what I just showed you. You know, I wanted to show you guys the version, you know, without like a ton of buffs first, and then go ahead and just show you guys what it's like whenever you actually start to get her going. As I said, I think this is a very good baseline to have your Xiangling start using the Emblem of Severed Fate. I still need to get better artifacts for this build in particular. I also want to level her up a little bit more, but I think this is a very good representation of how strong she can be with the Emblem of Severed Fate and the catch. But as I said before, if you have better substats on some of the other artifact sets that we recommended, I would go ahead and use those until you can farm yourself a good Emblem of Severed Fate and start using it on her. But other than that, yeah, Xiangling's an amazing character. She's a really good 4-star that competes with a lot of 5-stars, and all of her damage is done off of the field. Not to mention just being Pyro is automatically a really good thing. So she is just an amazing character. If you don't have her built, I highly recommend building her. It is very, very good. She's on a lot of floor 12 abyss clears, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. That's going to be it for the video, though. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your Xiangling build, how much damage you're doing with your Xiangling. If it's better built than my Xiangling, I would like to know in the comment section below. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. My name is Blossoms, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.